You think when he did it, he's saying, wow, that's out there, but he did it.
I think he's an alien, actually. That's all alleged. Those are my thoughts. Okay, the guy has become a billionaire like 8 different times, and then he built his own rocket ships to go back home, and then comes back, and we're all just like, yeah, it's normal. Okay, we got it. Congrats, Elon and SpaceX. Anyway, this city, Austin, okay, tomorrow, hosting a massive one. And this morning in the meeting was funny listening to you kind of chat about this. Sark, obviously, you and he have a great relationship, a great connection. I've had a lot of success together. Kirby Smart and you, obviously great connection, great relationship, a lot going on. How do you think both of them are viewing tomorrow, and have you got a chance to catch up with them this week?
Well, I talked to Sark this week, and I think Sark is, he kind of stays pretty even keel. He sort of analyzes the game a little differently in terms of how he's going to approach it, what he's going to do. He's had his offensive staff together for a long time, so they know they're going to have to make adjustments in the game because of his respect for Kirby and the way Kirby will play defense and what he'll try to do on defense is going to be something a little bit different that they'll have to adjust to. But having a staff on offense that's been together for a long time, I think allows them to do that. They kind of started a little slow last week against Oklahoma, then all of a sudden you see them getting going. So that wouldn't surprise me if that happens. I did not talk to Kirby. I'm going to talk to him a little later today, but I know Kirby's been a little concerned about, how they play defense. Not quite as good a tackling team as they've been in the past. They've given up a few more explosive plays, but he's got a really good defensive coaching staff. He's got good players, and I'm sure they'll get him on track.
He was all fiery last week. I don't know if you saw that. He tried to tackle a guy, punch him in the face. That wasn't. It was actually just a little shoulder bump, but boy, it was a big deal because it felt like Kirby was kind of out of sorts a little bit, and that's kind of been this Georgia team maybe in a couple different spurts of the season. It's like, are they still the same? That's kind of the conversation that's taking place. You don't think Kirby's thinking that, or how do you think Kirby's handling all of it?
No, I think Kirby is got a really good ability to be technical when things aren't going exactly right. I think, sometimes all the rest of us outside of, the fans and some of the people, react a little more emotionally. But, the real key to the drill is I think when things aren't going well with your team, you have to sit down and be technical and show them these are the things we need to improve on, not get emotional and go crazy, because the players want to play well. I mean, nobody feels worse when something doesn't go right than the player. So it's not just about the coach. And I think Kirby was always really good at that when he was a defensive coordinator with us. When we had a bad game or we didn't defend something properly, he was really good about being technical about how to fix it.
Yeah, both these guys obviously went to the Saban University of Coaching and now having massive success. Top 5 matchup yet again. Another time this season we have a marquee matchup that we get to be at and chit-chat about. Have you ever, because this is Texas, Georgia, first time SEC, obviously. These new alignments are bringing these new games earlier in the year. I think everybody's pumped about it, and the ratings are saying that. Have you ever played out here, and what do you expect of this type of environment for Georgia?
Yeah, we played out here 2 years ago. First game we...
Oh, yeah, we were here.
Yeah, we opened. Yeah.
Wait, we called that game. Yeah, we were on the sideline again.
It's like 125 degrees in the shade. It was really tough. But, the atmosphere here, I think you're going to see it grow into more and more of a SEC atmosphere because they're going to have more games like this that are going to have huge national and playoff, implications. And, the people here will, they'll get into it because they'll go see some of these other places. And, Texas has great tradition, but I think their fans are going to become SEC fans in a hurry.
Allegedly, the stadium ops, the one in Alabama we talked about. AJ, that Alabama stadium, the way it is operated is awesome, right? Yes. We talked about that.
The best. Unbelievable experience for game days, yeah.
So that was Miss Terry's, from what I've been told, Miss Terry is the coach of that operation whenever the Sabans move into Alabama's head coaching operation. Allegedly here, they hired somebody like 4 or 5 years ago from Penn State that kind of started that entire thing. And they said over the last few years, like the stadium ops and the way that matters. I don't think people really think about it. It does matter how the stadium is.
It matters a whole bunch because, you got dead time in the game. You got these 4-minute commercials, you got 2.5-minute commercials, but, this is the entertainment business, and to keep people engaged, you have to have other things going on in the game. And it was really dry when we first went to Alabama, and everywhere we'd go, Miss Terry went to all the away games, everywhere we'd go, she would come back and say, why don't we do that? Why don't we play this music during that? Why don't we have these lights? and it's entertaining, and people sing songs and light up their phone at the same time and do the wave. I mean, that's the fun of the game that I think keeps people engaged, excited, and enthusiastic, and I think it's very important.
Yeah, keeps them engaged so that when a random third down comes in the middle of the third quarter or the middle of the second quarter, and they've been tailgating all day, they haven't fallen off waiting for the fourth quarter. It's like they're in it, and that's
They're in
unreal.
it. They stay in it.
Have you heard these choppers that have been flying over? There's choppers flying over. They've been here all day, Karen.
Someone's going to rappel down in a second.
Legit, there's a chopper right up there. Some bitch turning sideways. I don't know if we can get it because we're on the concourse here, doing a lap. It's a big weekend, but the lights are actually, I think, kind of being tested right now here up at the top. We saw Tennessee's social media team. They put out what their stadium is like. All these lights going pitch black, and then the music matching up with it. Looked like a nightclub for like 4 or 5 minutes, and then bang, they were right back to action. It's like, how can you not be invested in the game there? Excited to see what this is like tomorrow. AJ has a question for you, Coach.
Coach, you mentioned this is the entertainment business. Have you always thought that way, or is that something that evolved as you got older in the coaching game? I know there's some coaches that are, want to put their head down and say all that matters is what happens on the field in between those lines, and they don't think about all that other stuff that actually does impact the game.
Well, I think that I realize that it's the entertainment business, but I also wanted to keep the team and the things that you had to do with the team to get the team ready to play and sort of create the culture in the organization that you needed to have, not to allow that to be affected by the entertainment business, if that makes any sense.
Yeah, you got to separate the two, church and state.
Yeah.
Yeah, you got to be able to focus on the main thing.
That's
but
right.
then also, whenever the main thing's happening, we need everybody else to be doing their job as well.
That's exactly right. So, good question, but I always tried to keep those two things separate. But I also knew as a coach, you needed to do that to promote the program, to get recruits, to see, so people had an image of what the program was all about. Plus, it's also, important for the university itself. I don't think anybody really realizes that the football program is probably the window that most people look at a university. It's not the engineering school. It should be.
Right. Mad respect to the engineers. Mad respect.
But they look at it through the athletic program, and so to understand that and make it an entertaining part of what you're doing for people outside, I think creates value for the university, creates value for the program, creates value for your team.
Yeah, the brand can be strong, and that'll help out the football team because more eyes on your program, more money coming into your program, more interest in your program means more five-star recruits. And to quote the great Nick Saban, I found out quickly I can't coach bad players.
Can't coach bad players to play good. Really.
Now, you were one of the first coaches, I think. They give you credit. You and Beamer, I believe, is who the game day people give credit to. For, whenever game day wanted to come to town, you were very, would like to have game day here, kind of understood it all. Hey, so I think to AJ's question, he's been like this, I think, since the beginning, right? You've kind of understood that you can...
Absolutely. I think, what you give in terms of your time and the investment that you make in cooperating with ESPN and people coming in game day and all that is well worth the return that you get because of the value that it creates from an image standpoint.
And it's like Sark knows that. Sark's coming on the show today. He doesn't have to. Obviously doesn't have to. Very thankful for it. I think he's coming on. Everybody that has come from the Saban University understands the vehicle and the avenue of hey, it's okay if people get to know my personality a little bit. It's probably going to help in recruiting and see my face and see the big time thing. You're awesome, brother. Tone Diggs has a question for you, Coach Saban.
Yeah, Coach. Indiana has a big one this weekend as Nebraska comes to town. IU is 6-0. And I think you're familiar with their coach, Curt Cignetti. He was on your staff for a few years down in Alabama. Do you ever think he would have this success? And what's Cignetti like behind closed doors?
Yeah, well, I've always thought Curt had the right stuff because I actually coached for his dad. His dad was the coach when I was at West Virginia. His dad was really well organized, very good recruiter. Curt came up in, that environment, coach's environment. He's very smart, bright. He was a receiver coach for us, but has a great offensive mind and is a really good quarterback coach. And I think, there's a lot of people who call plays that are offensive coordinators, but they're not really good quarterback coaches. And I think, that's one thing Sark is. He's a really good quarterback coach as well as a good play caller. And I think Curt Cignetti is the same way, and that's why his quarterback's playing so well.
Why do you think, and the quarterback obviously playing well with good offense, and they put people away, though, at the end. Being able to flip that culture. He credited the transfer portal because he got a lot of guys from JMU that know his culture. He brought his offense coordinator, defense coordinator over from JMU. But in Indiana, we live there, that place was never going to be a good football team. And then he comes in there so quickly. Why do you think Curt Cignetti's able to do that? And how many people are able to do that?
Well, I think he hit the transfer portal, which helped them play better defense. I think he hit the quarterback, which has certainly been, and they've got some decent skill guys, which has helped them be able to throw the ball effectively. But I also think that the proof is going to be in the pudding this week because I think Nebraska has a little better defense than what they've been playing against. So if they can actually do it against this type style of defense, I think they're for real. As an offensive football team and as a total team.
I love the fact that you coached for his dad, and then now he coached for you, and then now he's flipping Indiana into a powerhouse, and he sounds a lot like you. I congratulated him on the start. Hey, when he came on the show the other day, I was like, hey, congratulations. I did the full-on, way to go, as if he, won a bowl. And he goes, nah, we're not selling. We're halfway through the race. That's literally what he said. He was trying to downplay it all. Sounds like no rat poison is entering Bloomington. We'll see. Big one against Nebraska. Conman has a question for you.
Yeah, Coach, we're at the point now with Kalen DeBoer and Bama where every week it feels like whatever he does, people just say well, Saban would have done this or Saban would have, worn something else on the sideline. When it comes to things like that, did you ever have to deal with something like that where it was you were replacing either a legendary coach or a coach that was beloved and everyone was comparing you to the guy before? And how do you think Kalen DeBoer's handling that because he is being compared to the greatest of all time and yourself?
Well, I think that anytime you have a successful coach, I felt that a little bit when I was a coach at Michigan State because George Perlis had won the Big Ten championship there. Of course, I was on his staff, back then as defensive coordinator. And he had a lot of people who really believed in, what he did, the discipline, the culture that he created, and all that. So when I went there, I was expected to do things almost exactly like he did them because I had been on the staff. But yet, through the years, I'd learned some other ways to do things because of being with Belichick and, some people like that. So sometimes I felt a little like, why aren't you doing it a certain way? But I do think that this is a tough transition for Kalen, is anytime you take over a successful program. And I don't want to be judgmental about what they do because I think he has to do what he does his way. He can't be me, he can't try to be somebody that he isn't. And I think there's more than one way to skin a cat, and I actually think the guy's been successful, and I think his way will work. I just think it's adjustment for a lot of the fans and the people. But I think he'll win them over because he's a good guy and he's a good coach, and he's got a good system and a good organization, and I'm just trying to be supportive and helpful any way that I can so that he can make a smooth transition.
Modern world, let's say that it doesn't end up how everybody hoped it would end up for Alabama this year. I'm not saying that's going to happen, saying there has been glimpses of that potentially happening. Let's say a lot of guys transfer out. Possible, right? A lot of people transferring out Alabama. Then he gets his guys in, or tries to. How long do you think Alabama fans realistically give somebody maybe get their own? I'm not saying this is all going to happen. This is a hypothetical. I don't want it to happen. I like Kalen DeBoer. I like Alabama. Hypothetical, though. How long do you think in modern world do you really have to potentially have that situation?
Well, I think one thing that doesn't get acknowledged is the fact that when I retired, there was 26 players that transferred.
Yeah, there's a
nobody
2-week
talks
period,
about that.
right? There's a 2-week period where they're allowed to just go in and pitch.
And Isaiah Bond was a pretty good player. He would be an impact player if he was still at Alabama, especially with some of the players that, they have now. So then Proctor leaves, then he comes back.
Caleb.
So Caleb Downs is, look, I looked at all the guys in the draft last year because I did the draft. He was a freshman. And if he was a junior or senior in the draft, he would have been probably the first safety taken in the draft.
Yeah.
So that's a pretty significant player. So they really lost a lot, and people don't talk about that. Now they got a few guys in, but I do think there's going to be a transition, and he's got to get his people in there, and he'll get the opportunity to recruit them and do it. And I can't make any predictions about the future in terms of what people's patience are going to be, but they don't have a lot of patience at Alabama. They have high expectations. You can't get caught up in that. You got to just focus on what you got to do to make the team play as well as you can, and don't let any of that stuff affect you. And that's one of the things that I think allowed me to not lose my mind while I was there, because we got criticized every time we lost a game. I don't know how many times I heard Paul Feinbaum say, "This is the beginning of the end." I mean, but it never was. But you said it a lot.
He just said that about Georgia actually yesterday. I think literally just said it yesterday.
You only have to lose one game with Paul.
Well, he's got high standards. Paul Feinbaum's got those high standards. I mean, after it happened here, people were and you doing our show last year. I mean, that was everybody was thinking he's gone. As soon as you guys had a little hiccup, he's gone. And then you end up being one of the Final Four teams. College football is a wild place. It is a wild place. It's been awesome this year, Coach.
Yeah.
College football has been, I assume every year.
It's great. I mean, there's a lot of unknowns now in college football with the transfer portal and name, image, and likeness and all the things that are going on. But when the season actually starts, and I think the 12-team playoff has added a lot to fan interest and people's interest in general, because there's 25 or 30 teams that halfway through the season still have a chance to get in the playoffs. And even if you have one loss, or even, like even in Georgia's case, if they have 2 losses, they're still going to be, if they finish the season, they've got enough good teams that they have to beat that they'll be able to get in the playoffs. So you don't lose the fan base, and you have so many more fan bases that are engaged.
This conversation is going to happen tomorrow. I'm excited for the world to hear it, because they have a great graphic that's going to be on game day tomorrow about all the teams that are still very much in it, very much in it. And with the conference championship automatic bid, I assume there's a lot of teams that aren't even going to be on the graphic, about 30 deep, that are going to be like, well, there's still a road for us to win our championship and get in there.
Right.
It's a good thing.
West Virginia.
West Virginia.
Bingo.
West Virginia,
Bingo.
come on
Bingo.
now. Trust the climb, baby.
Bingo.
Having fun.
And I'll mention this much in defense of West Virginia.
Yes.
There were times with Georgia and with us at Alabama when we did not win the SEC and we won the national championship. So you got hope.
I don't know. I don't know if that's the same situation.
It's similar. Georgia,
apples, right?
Georgia, Bama,
I agree.
West
I agree.
Virginia.
You're right. Yeah, we'll hang on to it. You're right. Ty has a question for you back in Indiana.
Same tier.
Yeah, Coach, anytime people talk about Bill Belichick throughout his career in the NFL, they talked about how he'd score over the rule book to kind of find little nuances that he could use to his advantage. We just saw Dan Lanning do this with Oregon coming out of the timeout with the 12 men on the field, taking the penalty and then the runoff. And then the NCAA promptly turned around and basically said, hey, we've closed that loophole. You can't do this anymore. What'd you think of that decision? Was it kind of knee-jerk, or do you agree with that? And how often over the course of your career did you have situations like this where it's like, oh, we can really kind of manipulate the rules here to our advantage?
First of all, I think that this happened at some point, and you guys know more about this than I do, a few years ago in the NFL.
Okay.
Where they had a similar situation and they just changed the rule to 12 guys on the field was a dead ball foul. So no time went off the clock, which I feel like that's the way it should be. I don't think that you run a play with 12 guys on the field, which minimizes your chances on offense of having success, even though you still could have success. And then you lose time in the game, and the time is more important than the plays.
Oh, yeah.
All right, so can't fault a coach for trying to take advantage of the rules. And, I always had somebody on the staff who was in charge of rules. And they would always give us a report on, all right, if this situation occurred, what should we do in that situation to take advantage of the rules, or what would be a disadvantage for us, and what would, so that's kind of how I tried to manage it. I didn't spend a lot of time, because I was a guy that was always about execution, man, and what our team did was the most important thing. So I wasn't trying to create some advantage by, taking advantage of the other team or the rules, but because I always told our players it's going to be about what we do. So I didn't want everybody to think we're trying to do something outside of our team that was going to help us win. It was going to be about what we did.
Got it. I understand that. Let's look in the mirror and do that. With that being said, Coach Lanning had somebody on the staff, I'd assume, or maybe he's the one that thought of it, for them to call a timeout in the moment and be like, hey, we're in it. They've probably been, as you know, you said you had a guy that did the rules and come through it, probably pitched that in the offseason or maybe 2 years ago. Like, hey, if we're ever in a situation where we can put 12 men on the field, they're outside of field goal range, won't really matter, it'll be no play, they run the clock down with like less than 30 seconds left. For them to remember it, execute it, and have it happen, and then beat college football seemingly and get a win, I have respect for it because there's a couple rules that have been changed off of things that I've done in special teams game. You know, because usually special teams is where you can really exploit the rules, if you will.
Right.
For that moment to come together the way it did, wild. How'd you feel about that Oregon-Ohio State game?
Well, I was really impressed with the Oregon, especially their offense. You know, Ohio State's defense was, and I think this is the thing you have to be careful of, is, you know, we talk about these teams that have the number one defense in the country. They're the number one scoring defense. But who did they play to come up with those stats?
Who they beat?
And then they play somebody really good, and they sort of get, you know, exposed a little bit. And you start to wonder, you know, exactly how good are they, especially when they play somebody good, because that's when it counts. And in college football, I think that the rules favor the offense. You know, being able to block down the field, throw RPOs, throw advantage throws, throw screens and block people and crack people. I mean, it's tough to play as good a defense now as you used to and be able to win the game on defense. So I was really impressed with Oregon, the way they played on defense against a great Ohio State offensive team with a lot of weapons, and then the way that Oregon just, you know, sort of picked Ohio State apart. They didn't affect the quarterback in any way. And
He had time.
Yeah, and he had time, but they didn't ever pressure.
Yeah,
I mean,
exactly.
it was just four guys rush, which, you know, that's kind of an antiquated way to play defense. And I'm not being critical of somebody's philosophy at Ohio State, but, you know, there's so much four-man rush, simulated pressure, still able to play the coverages that you play, drop different people, rush somebody that is supposed to be dropping, drop somebody that's supposed to be rushing. And these things are ways to get pressure without giving up anything.
Yeah.
And coverage. And, you know, I think in this day and age of football, you got to go down that road a little bit or you're going to be behind the eight ball.
Okay, so let's talk about what you're referring to here about teams being ranked, whatever they're ranked on the offense or defense side of the ball. Ohio State defense is number one in the country, I think, right, Tone? Going into Oregon?
Are they still?
Yeah,
Yeah.
no, Texas is now.
Yeah, Texas.
Going in.
Texas is.
They were number one. Of course, yeah. So let's talk about that. So Tone Diggs there mentioned this week, like, maybe Oregon had a little bit more calluses from earlier in the season from how they played. They had to win a couple games that were tough, Idaho, and then obviously Boise State. And they kind of got, I don't want to say exposed a little bit going into the year, but they had some tough fights. They're wondering about this team here with, you know, Georgia's been in some tough, callous fights.
Right.
Texas has seemingly been able to do whatever they want. How big of an advantage is that, you think, to a team that's been through some shit early in the season? Obviously, USF, everybody will go back to with your team last year. Do you like that as a coach, that there's a little bit of early adversity, maybe?
Yeah, I do. I like early on for, you know, us to sort of find out who we are. And, you know, Georgia is a team that has the heart of a champion, which they showed in the Alabama game when they got behind 28-0 or 30-7 or whatever it was. And they came back in the game and actually went ahead in the game when everybody said this was never going to happen. So when you're playing a team like that, you got to play for 60 minutes, obviously. But I do think that Texas defense is very good. I'm not criticizing it at all. But I also don't think that they've been really tested like they're going to be tested in this game. Because Georgia has a really good quarterback. They've been a very effective passing team. They've had some balance on offense in terms of run pass. So they're going to get tested tomorrow more than they have all year long.
I can't wait to watch it. Let's go back to the NFL a little bit quickly. Amari Cooper just got traded to the Buffalo Bills. Obviously, Alabama man. He is, and this is, I don't know if it's a wild take. No, I think everybody agrees. There's never a peep out of Amari Cooper, ever. Any of this. Goes to the Raiders, ends up with the Cowboys, ends up at the Browns. He has monster numbers with everybody. This year hasn't been as great, but never complains as a guy who's been a number one wide receiver, been a first-round pick, everything like that. Him going to the Bills. Do you think this is a good reset for Amari Cooper this particular season? And have you talked to him, or what do we not know about Amari Cooper maybe?
Yeah, I think Amari Cooper's a great player, and I think he'll make a huge impact with the Bills, who have a good offensive team, good quarterback. And all that. But I think Amari Cooper sometimes is a little bit misunderstood because he's such a quiet guy. I mean, he went through 3 or 4 years at Alabama, however long he was there, and I don't know if we ever had a conversation. I mean, he was never in trouble. I mean, he never came in my office. He did everything he was supposed to do. He's a great person. Went to class, did everything we asked, practiced hard, did everything, but never said a word. So sometimes as a coach, you feel like, well, this guy's not really with it, or he's not really with us. But he is.
Yeah.
I mean, he's a great competitor. He made a lot of plays that made huge impacts in games, and I think he has the capability of doing that. So I think when you have a player like that sometimes in your organization or as a coach, you think this guy's really not competing, or he's really not the kind of guy that is engaged with the team. But he really is in his own way. He's just a very shy personality.
So that might be why some people maybe have a feeling or whatever, because he's just quiet. He's just a quiet.
Quiet.
Josh Allen would love that. Josh Allen would do the talking for him, I think, from what I've been told. In his entire thing.
I mean, you're talking about a guy that didn't learn how to drive until he was a sophomore and junior in college. He never had a driver's license.
Why is that?
Because he just never said anything.
He's so fast. He runs everywhere.
Came from, tough area in Miami. He got a great mama, but, it's just some people are a little bit socially maybe not as engaged in their, growth process.
Introvert.
Yeah, and that's the way he is. I love the guy. I'd have him on. If I was coaching the team, I'd want him on my team.
Coach Saban, all right, we got 11 guys playing on the offensive side. One of them, I'm never going to hear from. Never. There's never going to be a problem. He's going to do his shit. I would love to have that guy. If we could have 10 others, too, every other position, it would be fantastic.
Especially at wide receiver.
Bingo.
Yeah,
that's kind of.
I mean, you talk about energy vampires. They go crazy at that position. They all want the ball. They don't want to block. All right, how many passes I'm going to catch? I mean, it's a.
Why is that, Coach?
Call them energy
Why is that position?
vampires.
Why is that a receiver thing? Like, it seems like that's.
And do they have to have that?
Well, because I think because you might play 65, 70 plays in a game, and maybe you get targeted 5 times, and maybe you catch 3 balls, and you're running crazy, those other 65 plays, but you become insignificant, and nobody wants to be insignificant. They want the ball, and it's a little easier to give it to a running back. So these guys just, that's one thing I loved about Julio Jones. Julio Jones changed the culture of the receiver position at Alabama when he came there in our first recruiting class, because this guy wanted to be on a kickoff team. He would block. He was physical. He wanted the ball. He broke his hand, played in the game. Everybody said, this guy's going to be out for 3 or 4 weeks. He played in the next game, caught the ball, never complained. But he changed the culture of the position because he wasn't worried about getting the ball. He's a competitor, man. He just wanted to win. He wanted to dominate the guy he was playing against. And changed the whole position for us, and we had some great wideouts through the years, and a lot of it was because he changed the culture at the position. I remember one time, it's like 10 years after he's played at Alabama, and we're in summer conditioning, and we have 7-on-7, and the coaches aren't allowed on the field, so Julio's like to train and rehab and all that at Alabama. So he's out there watching 7-on-7. Some receiver misses a ball, looks at the quarterback, cusses the quarterback, cusses the DB, kicks the ball. Julio calls him over and says, he hadn't played for 10 years now. He called the guy over and said, that's not how we do it here.
Man,
you talk about a dog.
Well, talk about a culture, brother. I mean, that isn't just obviously Julio. That's like your program, your culture has people wanting to come back and uphold it. I mean, that's a beautiful thing. He's what, 6'4"?
He's a
6'5"?
Yeah, he's 6'3", 6'4", but strapped, man.
Massive.
Physical, fast.
And good.
And he was quiet, too. And, we were recruiting him. I was afraid we didn't have very good skill guys when we went there. So we signed 4 receivers, committed to us. And Julio hadn't committed yet. And I called him on the phone and I said, Julio, I don't, and he was our number 1 guy. I said, I don't want you to be affected by the fact that we already got 4 receivers and you haven't committed yet. I hope that doesn't affect your decision-making to come to Alabama. He said, Coach, you could sign 100 guys and I wouldn't care.
It's not going to matter.
The number 1 overall.
It is not going to matter. Julio was a beast, as are you. Can't wait to do the show tomorrow with you. College Game Day. You're the man, brother. You're continuing to kill it on TV.
Thanks. Well, I'm trying.
You know that big ass.
You're a big help to me, though. I mean, really, you make me feel relaxed.
Too relaxed.
Because
Speaking of you,
not
vitamins.
not-
I didn't know how relaxed.
I'm not taking anything that you take.
I understand. You know that big ass cow's going to come through tomorrow, Bevo.
Yeah.
That thing. I have some breaking news. I think has broke while we've been talking. Uga will not be making the trip to Texas.
Wait, what?
Oh no!
What
'Cause
happened?
He's
I don't know. It happened-
he's too young, so he's a 2-year-old puppy, and they said it's too far of a trip because it's a new Uga, and
He'll be
he's
pooping all over the
he's a
field?
little too wild.